So it's called World War II, Reasons and Why.
Okay.
Right, World War II, Reasons and Why. And obviously this is part one. So I'm just gonna do a bit of shop here in a minute. I'm just gonna just do a quick thing on you, and we will be starting.
Great.
There is some, right? Have you got a pen? This is really important. A pen is important.
And a book.
Well, yeah, I presume so. I wouldn't want you to write this all on the back of your hand. So anyway, World War II, Reasons and Why, part one, right? So this is your one-to-one, and what we'll do, we'll have it recorded anyway. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off straight from the hip, and I'm going to go on to showing you this. It's on my computer, and it's called Quora.
Who?
Yeah, got
Quora.
it. Yeah, it's at the top. Quora, Quora.com. Quora.com. Now, on Quora.com, right? On Quora.com, it's got lots of people who write in about theories about the Second World War, about what if, yeah? And just straight from the hip. As I say, none of this is going to be in any order, right? But obviously, it's everything's going to be linked. So we'll start off with this anyway. It's got people asking questions. During World War II, did the Germans give captured Soviet pilots preferential treatment similar to that offered to British and American pilots as compared to all their other Russian POWs, right? So it goes on to say, during World War II, did the Germans give captured Soviet pilots preferential treatment? In German prison camps, Soviet military prisoners of war were not given the same treatment as British or American prisoners. Soviets were brutally treated. And there you go. The Soviet Union had not signed the Geneva Convention, and the Germans used this as a justification for the difference in the treatment of prisoners. Soviets were identified by the Germans as subhuman. It is estimated that at least 3.3 million Soviet prisoners of war died in Nazi custody out of the 5.7 million that they actually captured. I'm not going to go any further with this because, naked Soviet military prisoners at Mauthausen concentration camp. And I wanted to start from the top. And so type in Quora and you can come up with various questions, right? So if you go, basically you sign in. So I'm going to type in a question.
He's crying.
What's that?
The cat is crying. Sorry. Where's the cat? Why is he crying? Okay. Sorted.
Right, so at the top of this bar, you can type in questions like this. Did Hitler personally kill anyone? Right? Strange little questions, right? And it answers actually questions. Did Hitler personally... people rant and rave on here. They said Hitler was a 25-year-old homeless man living between Vienna and Munich at the time the Great War broke out. He had been an art student who had recently dropped out of university, partially as a result of disputes with his former teachers and partially because of financial circumstances. So, you can ask questions like that and
okay. So that will answer any sort of sideline questions because we're going to be sort of dealing with the facts in a way, aren't we?
Yeah, but
lots of any sort of
lots of the facts are affected by age-old questions.
Okay.
Right, the question. There's lots of questions about the Second World War that have not been answered, and people still ask those questions. And the biggest question is, and as I say, this isn't in any order, right? So what we'll do, we'll show this image now. and we should be looking at this gentleman.
Okay, yeah.
Right, so we're starting at the end. We're starting with an end image, right? This is one of the last images of Adolf Hitler in 1945.
Well, he looks a lot better than those Russian POWs, doesn't he? Far more well-fed.
Well, see, you've linked the two in together. So this is the way we're going to do this. This is clearly the way we're going to do this. Now, I would say that it's. I was wandering down the road the other day, and I thought, have you got an internal bias about the Second World War? But my internal bias about the Second World War is a bit twisted.
I probably have, from being what I've been brought up with, which is why I want to study it, so yes. I can come to, the reality of
come things. To your own conclusions and come to the reality.
Yes, right? Rather than any racist thoughts and things like that.
It's so easy. It's so easy to get racist when you're thinking about the Second World War.
Yes,
it's so easy to it's so easy to look at all the literature and start to think, right, I don't like these people or I like these people. So you can quite easily look at this from an allied point of view, that is everybody that's waged against the central Axis powers. And we'll describe that in a minute by looking at a map. You can think, right, you can have a Russian point of view and say the Germans were evil because they did this, right? Yeah. Or the Japanese were evil because they did this. Or you can take
understand that when you had people coming home from the war in an awful condition, and that's your beloved son, brother, husband, whatever, grandfather, friend.
Yes.
Awful things did happen.
Yeah, but that's your bias. Or you could do the other point. You could do the other point of view. You could do the other point of view, just one point of view. That I've spoken to a gentleman, and he said to me, he said, well, actually, my parents were very much pro the war Germany, and they said they believe that the reason why Germany lost is because the people gave up. There's no remorse there. But then again, a counter argument could be that the Russians did some terrible things to the German people when they had conquered Germany. So you've got lots of different arguments here, and cause and effect. There's nothing, you can't justify anything that happened in the Second World War. You can't, cause and effect. You can't, for example, justify Coventry being bombed by the Germans in 1940, and then you can't justify the Allies bombing Dresden a few years later and completely destroying the German city of Dresden. But basically, it's cause and effect. The Allies believed that the justification of what they did to the Germans was because the Germans did it to them.
Yes.
So, for example, the dam busters blowing up the dams in the Ruhr Valley, flooding factories and killing tens of thousands of people who drowned because of the flooding. The Allies could say that was justified because the Germans in 1940 tried to destroy British infrastructure and factories and all the rest of it. So there's all at play. Right, there's all those ideas, and again, it's just that age-old question of why, but, and where, and all these other things. So I think the best thing to start off with is sort of into the subject with looking at a little bit of a map. Right now, there's a few interesting things about this map in front of us, and the yellow areas describe the Allied power countries, those that were actually fighting against the Axis powers. Right, so the Axis powers are in red. So simply, what we need to do, we need to look at the map and say, right, these countries. So Japan entered the war in December 1941. Germany started the war in 1st of September 1939. And here's another little bit of a weird fact. The war didn't end officially until the 2nd of September 1945. The Japanese still fought on after the 2 bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
You can't blame them, can you?
So the Japanese continued fighting, and here's a little really freak out fact, right? Many Japanese prisoners of war who were prisoners of war under the Russians, most of them were never ever returned because the Russians didn't really have the same treaty with Japan as Russia had with Germany after the Second World War. So there's something there, and the reason why the Russians saw the Japanese as subhuman, and I've already said at the beginning that the Germans saw the Russians as subhuman. So can you see the balancing act here? That there's lots of people, we're justifying this because of that, and 2 wrongs never make a right. So what we need to principally do is not blame. I've got to take away my bias, and I've got to say this: do not blame Germany for starting the Second World War, because if you blame Germany for starting the Second World War, then we've got an internal bias already. Yeah, because there were lots of reasons why the war started. It wasn't just because Germany invaded Poland in September the 1st, 1939. That was, you know, put it this way: Germany invaded Poland, but also Russia invaded Poland at the same time. Nobody ever talks about that fact, that Russia actually invaded Poland. And here's another very, 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 very strange fact, right? That in 1939, Russia was at war with Britain. And not so long after, Russia became an ally of Britain. So again, cause and effect, yin and yang. One way of looking at it, another way of looking at it. It's all, the whole war is like that. I'll give you another little bit of a throwaway fact. On this map here, forget about Japan. Japan's not here on the map, and Germany's not on the map, right? These 3 countries here, Italy, Hungary, and Romania, swap sides in the Second World War. One minute they're fighting. See, do you see what I did there again? One minute they're fighting against the Allied powers, and the next minute they're allied with the Allied powers. And it's the same with the Russians. In 1939, Russia was an enemy of the Allied powers, and then it became a friend of the Allied powers.
Yeah.
And after the war, Russia became an enemy of the Allied powers. And Germany became an ally of the Allied powers. Do you see what I did there? I actually basically went after for 1945. And then I basically brought Germany as an ally of the Allied powers as part of another war, the Cold War. Yeah.
Yes.
So so if we have a little bit of a look at this, right? And you know what? Sometimes it's easy to learn something new, right? And I've actually just learned something, and I really don't understand this. If you look at the map, there's a little island there coloured in red.
Yes.
What is that island?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't got my phone to hand to check.
Yeah, but what? Okay. Here's a little bit of homework for you. What we're gonna...
That would have been an easy base, wouldn't it, for going across?
Yeah, no, but that would surely the person who's actually done this map has made a mistake. That little island there. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a little bit of homework.
Well, I don't know, because
I'm going to type in the Caribbean, right?
Where's my phone? I put my phone down.
I'm thinking that the person who did this has made a little bit of a mistake. Right, so Caribbean map. And so basically it's showing that, yeah, hang on a minute. If we go, I'm looking at the map, and it's coming up as Haiti or the Dominican Republic. So I'm just gonna.
Haiti, and I didn't.
No, hang on a minute. I think I'm wrong there. Haiti and Dominican Republic. Yeah, it's not that. It's right. It's actually showing as Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Well, that can't be right.
Well, would that be Spanish?
No, but the Spanish were actually. No, I got to be honest with you. I think there's a mistake on that map. I've got to be. That's Puerto Rico, and as far as I'm concerned, Puerto Rico was never in the First World War. In the First World War, Germany had colonies. You see, after the First World War, they didn't. So we'll just ignore that red thing. But if you want to do a little bit of research on that, that's fine. Right, that'd be good. So you're looking at quite a bleak map, but there's another country on here that we haven't even mentioned. It's a country known as Finland.
Right.
Now, actually, I'm gonna give you a chuck away fact. Finland was at war with Russia before the outbreak of the Second World War. And because Finland was already at war with Russia, and Finland was doing pretty well against Russia, right? And another chuck away thing that is a bit vague. Finland is a country that survived after the Second World War when Germany didn't. Japan had to be occupied. Romania, Hungary, and Italy had to be occupied. Finland is the only country on that map that sort of came out of it okay.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't come out of it brilliantly, but it actually survived because it was already at war with Russia. Finland had another war, right? It was at war with Russia for another reason. And basically Finland and Germany were fighting the same enemy, so hence they were on the same side. Okay. Do you see what we did there? So it's just that thing. So what we're going to do now? I want to paint a little bit of a picture, right? So now we need to go all the way back. We need to go all the way back to actually. We need to go back to 1871. In fact, we're going so far back that that this really interesting map paints a new picture of the previous one, right? And what happens is that this map here shows the countries that are at war with the Allied powers. These are the Axis powers. And then what we do have is the territory that Germany and Japan were sort of in control of in the Second World War. It's quite a big area, to be honest with you. And all these sort of areas that are sort of in orange were territories that were either captured by Germany and Japan and Italy and all the rest of it, or countries that were sort of territorially linked to countries that Germany conquered, such as France. Yeah? Yeah. But what we got to do, we got to actually start, and we got to try and understand this war by looking at 1871. Okay. Now, in 1871, Germany defeated France. Actually, I've actually got a fact wrong there. Prussia defeated France, which is technically classed as Germany. Okay. The Prussian state. Prussia basically, and you know, you've got the you got Les Miserables. Yeah. Les Miserables is based around 1871 when France is at war with Prussia brackets Germany, and then Prussia marches into France, defeats the French, occupies Paris, and there's something called the Commune. And this is where the idea of Les Mis is actually based upon. Yeah. So one of the things about the First World War is to actually then to go actually onto the First World War. So this is all about cause and effect. 1871 in effect causes the First World War, and then 1914 in effect causes 1939. And 1939 causes the Cold War. And then the Cold War causes the breakdown of the Soviet Union in 1989. And 1989 causes the Balkan War. So this is all cause and effect throughout the whole thing. It's all linked to 1871. Actually, if there wasn't 1871, if something had changed if war hadn't broken out. Because what happened, there was somebody by the name of Emperor Napoleon. Okay, there was a new Emperor Napoleon in charge of France, and basically what this Emperor Napoleon wanted to do, he wanted to emulate. He wanted to become Napoleon the First, the great Napoleon who marched through Europe and defeated everybody except the British. So all of this is sort of cause and effect. To be honest with you, there's been wars between Germany and France for a very long time, right? For you know, and it's very rarely that France and Germany are ever on the same side. Because France and Germany are two big nations in Europe, and they're always not happy with each other, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to actually show an image of, we're going to actually show a map of the First World War, right? And this is where we've got to begin. And I think we'll look at this. See if I can just right, hang on, we don't want to do that one, that's going to complicate things because we're not doing the First World War per se, we're just looking at one of the reasons. All right, yeah, this is a good one. Let's just show this on the screen, and I want you to refresh yourself with this a second, and I'll be back. Hang on a minute. I'll just continue. I'll have a break at 5 too, okay? Right, so you seeing this map, Rosamond?
Yes.
Now, what this basically shows is countries that clearly didn't exist in the Second World War. The Ottoman Empire became Turkey, and it became a very small Turkey, right? And if the Ottoman Empire basically lost most of its territories in Europe and basically half of its territories in Asia, right? So Turkey wasn't part of the Second World War, and it wasn't going to enter the Second World War. It wasn't going to be part of the Second World War. What happened after the what happened again after the defeat of the Central Powers, or the armistice of Germany? The other countries surrendered, but the armistice of Germany, because Germany technically never surrendered in the First World War, it was an armistice, but all the other countries did. Italy gained territory over Austria, right? France gained territory over Germany. Germany lost territory to a new country called Poland. So what you're talking about is after the First World War, Germany basically loses bits of its country. Austria, this new country that's formed, loses bits of its country. It loses bits of its country, and Austria at the, if we look then, is if we look at a map saying post-war map 1919, if we look at this, and we can basically, hopefully this is showing on the screen.
Yes.
You can basically see a massive difference between the previous map and this one.
Oh, huge. So
what happens is this area here, this area is taken from Germany. This is called Alsace-Lorraine. Don't ask me how to spell it. The Alsace-Lorraine. Basically, what happens in 1871, Germany gains Alsace-Lorraine. In 1919, France gets back Alsace-Lorraine. And in 1940, Germany gets back Alsace-Lorraine again. You see what I mean? So basically,
back and forth. It's a borderland, isn't it?
It's a borderland, yeah, it's a borderland, right? But what's more critical to this map is that some historical bits of the old Prussia, the old Germany, right? The old Germany, this bit in the middle and big chunks of this and the bits of Lithuania end up going to create this new country called Poland.
Right.
So in other words, the Germans are very, very angry after 1919. Not only is this new country being created, which has nicked bits of Germany, France has got back a big chunk of land which they had taken off them in 1871. A new country is created called Czechoslovakia. So, Czechoslovakia is created, and naturally the Germans are quite angry that a new country has been created and they've nicked bits of their land. So Czechoslovakia has been created. And if you look at this map, this massive Austria-Hungary no longer exists. It no longer exists. And there's a big country in Europe called Romania. And Romania itself was on the winning side after the First World War, right? Because if we go back, if we look at this Central Powers in World War One. Click on there. In the First World War, can you see what's happening? Romania was actually on the winning side in the First World War. There you go. Romania. Austria-Hungary was with Germany. Bulgaria was with Germany, and the Ottoman Empire was with Germany. So if we go back to here, you can see that one of the countries that was one of the winning countries in the First World War, Romania takes big chunks of Bulgaria and Austria and Hungary. But there's a strange thing about this. If you look at the size of Russia, because Russia's in a mess after the First World War, Russia has territory taken off it to go to create Poland. So in other words, what's happened is Poland is created out of two big countries, Russia and Germany. And both Russia and Germany in 1939 want their territory back. The territory that we now know as Poland. Stalin wants Russia back. He wants Poland back. He wants the bits of Poland that had been, right, once part of Russia. And Germany said, actually, we want the bits of our country back that had been once part of Germany. But actually, do you know what I've done? I've simplified it. I have simplified something that is so complicated, but it makes it easier to get in your head. It makes it easier to think. One of the reasons why there's the Second World War, only one out of hundreds of reasons. There's lots of people angry, and it's not just the Germans. Everybody's angry. The French are happy, but everyone else is angry. You can see the Austrians are going to be a bit angry. The Hungarians, the Hungarians who had been part of Austria-Hungary, they're angry. The Bulgarians, they want a bit back. They want a bit of their territory back. And you know what upset the Bulgarians the most? Romania entering the war on the side of Germany in the Second World War. So it meant that if Bulgaria sides with Germany, it can't have some of its territory back. So Bulgaria and Romania are not happy with each other. But Bulgaria, I don't know if Bulgaria had sided with the Allies, then it may have ended up anyway. That's another story altogether. But the strangest country on the map is that one there, Italy. Italy is the strangest country on the map. They entered the First World War late. They didn't start the war in 1914. They started the war a year later. They entered the war on the side of the Allies, not the Central Powers. But the different. If you this is Italy. Right, this is Italy in 1919. right? So if we look at that little bit along Yugoslavia and Austria, all right. Hang on a minute. Let me get a previous map. Hang on a minute. Oh, hang on. We got that there, right? You can see a little bit of a difference in the border of Italy as compared with there. You see that big chunk there?
Yeah.
Right. So what's happening is that Italy's rewarded for it being on the side of the Allies. Okay. It started the war a little bit later. Actually, it didn't. Yeah, it's showing here that Italy's entering the war in later on in 1914, but it doesn't start. It doesn't start with the. It doesn't start on kickoff, right? It doesn't start in 1915. It starts later on in 1914. So I made a little bit of an error there, but we're within a few months. But the point is, Italy entered the war a little bit after the Allies start the war in the First World War. They just start a little bit later because they're seeing what's happening, right?
Yes.
And so they enter the war, and now they're at war with Austria and Hungary. They're at war with the Central Powers. But because they're at war with the Central Powers, Italy is rewarded. They are rewarded because they were on the winning side. And can you see that there? You can see Romania itself. This big chunk, this here, this bit of Hungary,
Yeah.
right, and a little bit of Bulgaria was actually given to Romania for being on the Allied side in the First World War.
Okay.
So this is all important stuff. So this is the map of Europe after 1919. So it's a very, very, very different map. And it's not always good to carve up countries after a war, as we saw with 1939.
Yeah.
What could have been better with Poland is that Poland could have become a demilitarized zone between Russia and Germany. It was administered by the League of Nations, right? Creating Poland was a dangerous thing to do. And taking bits of Germany away from Germany that had always been part of Prussia, as far as memory is, right? Russia's been all over the place, but bits of Germany that have always been Germany since the medieval period was a bad idea to give that to create Poland. Right. So these are some of the causes. So what we need to now go to is Germany, and we need to think about Germany and some of the reasons that made Germany go to war. Okay, made Germany go to war in 1939. Some of the other reasons, not the reasons of Russia and so on. Did you know? Here's a little bit of a throwaway fact. Did you know? Did you know in the official paperwork in the United States, America had a plan that they were going to invade Britain in the 1930s?
Right.
There's something, there's something straight. It's all a political game, right? It's all a political game, right? So what we need to do, we actually need to go. We are actually properly into A level. We are actually properly into A level Second World War now. So what we need to do, we need to type in map of Germany before 1939. That's what we're going to do. We're going to type in that one, right? And we're going to go to not that map. We're going to go to that map. Here we go. Right. So, it's not very. Oh God, it's not very clear. We need a little bit of the writing on there a minute. Hang on, let's just try and get a better map a minute. It's yeah. This one. I'm not thinking about maybe that one or that one, but I'm thinking the one that actually shows it the best. Let's go to this one. This is a bit more developed. This sort of shows it all. This is A-level stuff now. So what we've got is we're looking at before 1936. And 1936 is a wonderful year. And why is 1936 a wonderful year?
I don't know.
Because it's the Olympic Games.
Okay.
And I just gotta turn something off a minute. Why is it such a wonderful year? It's the Olympic Games, and guess where the Olympic Games is held?
Germany.
Berlin, exactly.
Berlin.
The Olympic Games is held in Germany. It's the Berlin Olympics, 1939. So just think, within 9 years.
Sorry, can I just 1936 or 1939? The Olympic Games.
Oh, did I just say that right? 1936 is the Olympic Games in Berlin, right? My mind just went too quick there. Within 9 years, the Germany that existed in 1936, this Germany that that held the Olympic Games, this Germany that was building great buildings and the Autobahn, and everyone respected Germany in 1936. In 9 years later, in 1945, Germany was unrecognizable. Germany by 1949 was so unrecognizable that the Germany that existed in 1936 was a fragment of what it had been. And by looking at this map, we start to see some of the politics, right? So this is all. So if we want to ignore on that map, ignore Poland, right? Ignore Poland at your peril, right? Ignore Poland. Now, what we do have is the international boundaries, and these international boundaries show Poland as a massive country in Europe. It's huge. Poland is almost as big as Germany. Now, Poland had not existed in 1918. It certainly existed in 1919. So in other words, overnight, this new country is created in Europe. Again, I'll repeat, which is nearly as big as Germany. In fact, Poland becomes one of the biggest countries in Europe overnight. Is created, basically. So what we're going to do, we're just going to create a country in Europe. This is what happened. This was the gassing. They were gassing. This is what we're going to do. So if you look at Germany, this is what Germany looked like in 1933, all the brown areas. This is what Germany looked like in 1933, right? Remember, this is 1933. It's not showing what had been taken off Germany in 1919. This is 1933. This is what we're interested in. Rosamond, everything's been forgotten now. We've started again. Okay. Right? This is 1933. This is going to be the way it is, right? Nothing else. This is the way. This is Europe, 1933. Nothing else. But in 1936, Rhineland there, that area from Cologne all the way down to Switzerland. Yeah.
So where is this? I can't.
In the center, Rhineland on the left.
Oh, yes, I've got it. Yes.
Rhineland on the left. On the left. Strangely enough, the Rhineland in 1936 goes back to Germany after being a country that the League of Nations controls until 1936. It's given back to Germany. It is part of Germany again. And if you look over there, 1935, can you see along the border between France and the Rhineland, there's a little bit that says gained by plebiscite 1935. In other words, they decided that we wanted to be part of Rhineland and Germany. In 1935, this is before 1936. So in other words, the sabers are rattling. People want to be part of Germany. And Europe is looking. Europe is now starting to see that there's going to be a war. Europe knows it. Actually, I'm going to say this, Rosamund. Germany didn't want a war with the whole of Europe. They did not want to go to war with Europe. Hitler's generals were saying, we are not going to be ready for war until 1942. Some were saying, we're not going to be ready to go up to war with the rest of the world until 1947. We've got to wait. Germany wanted to do everything to stop itself going to war. But unfortunately, Rosamund, you know when you've got you've got a little child that wants to go to the freezer and doesn't know how to close the freezer and keeps saying, look, I want to go to the freezer. I want, you're not having one. And then eventually the child goes to the freezer, gets the ice lolly out, and leaves the freezer, and everything's destroyed in the freezer, but the child gets their ice lolly, right?
Yeah.
If the child had waited, you could have given them an ice lolly and everything would have been fine. This is what Germany thought, right? It wanted its it didn't want war. And even then, I've already said that some of Germany's generals were saying, go to war in 1942 when we're going to be ready. Actually, Germany, lots of people in Germany said they didn't want to go to war anyway. They didn't want to go to war with the whole of Europe. And here's another strange fact that these are strange little facts that you can look on by yourself, right? In 1939, the country with the best equipped, the biggest army in Europe, right? In 1939, guess what country that was? I'll give you two guesses and see if you can guess it. What country in Europe was better equipped for war than anyone else? Go, give me two guesses.
Well, I was going to say the UK, but I don't know whether that's my bias.
No. Give me another guess. Think about it.
Well, it wasn't Germany, because...
No, it wasn't Germany. No, Germany wasn't ready for war.
Well, was it Poland then?
Poland wasn't ready. No, it was France. France had the best military in Europe in 1939. But France did not think. France, along the border between Switzerland, right, and Luxembourg, had defenses that the Germans couldn't get past. Right, there was this defensive line that the Germans couldn't get past. But basically, from Luxembourg to the Netherlands, the Germans didn't have any defenses. The French didn't have any defenses. So the French had these defenses between Germany along Switzerland and Luxembourg. They've been building them for years, right? But there were no real defenses between Luxembourg all the way through to the Netherlands and Germany, simply because France didn't occupy the Netherlands and Belgium, and they felt that they didn't need defenses there.
No.
Well, they couldn't build defenses across Luxembourg, Belgium, and the Netherlands because it wasn't their country, right?
Yes, no.
But they thought if Germany's ever going to go to war against France, they're going to have to go via the border between France and Germany, not through Belgium and the Netherlands and Luxembourg, right? This was something that they got wrong. So in other words, the French military was built up along the French-German border, but it wasn't really built up between Luxembourg and Dunkirk.
No.
Now that was a big mistake.
That was an error, wasn't it?
It was a huge error. You've got the biggest army in Europe, and here's another throwaway fact. This is an amazing fact, right? This is a huge, massive fact, right? That again, if I don't get around to it, right, in the next few weeks, right, I'm going to give you this fact. After Germany had invaded Poland, France invaded Germany, and if France would have continued its invasion into Germany, right, the war would have been over within months, because Germany did not have the military on the French border to fight it. France would have invaded into Germany. It would have probably called for help from the British, The British would have used its military to blockade the North Sea. France would have had its land armies pouring into Germany. Germany was not ready for war with France. This is why Germany invaded Poland and not France first, because Germany wanted to invade Poland because it needed its resources. It needed its manpower. It needed to invade Poland to see if its strategy for war worked. The Blitzkrieg, lightning war, a war that would mean that you would march your tanks and your infantry in and use artillery to fight a war and use your aircraft. That was Blitzkrieg, and they needed to know if it worked. France invaded Germany and they thought, oh, this is all right, we can do this, and they went back. They went back to France, but they made that error of not having real defenses between Luxembourg and Dunkirk. They made a huge error. It's basically, as you know, I've got OCD, right? And it's called the balloon effect, right? So in OCD, right, things can be really good on one side, and the other side, all the stresses, right? So you press the one side of the balloon, and all the stresses go into the other side. Or if you push the two together at the same time, right, you can control the OCD, right? But if your mind is off that side of the balloon, then you can't control it properly, right? This is what happened in the Second World War. France could not control, in other words, France had all its military in one place. It could have defeated Germany easily, right? Blitzkrieg would not work against its defenses between Switzerland and Luxembourg. Germany couldn't have done it. But what Germany could do is just force its troops in through the Netherlands and Belgium, right? Just chuck it through. And that was Blitzkrieg. And you could be in Paris within weeks. In fact, we've gone ahead of ourselves, and actually we're gonna have to finish very soon.
Oh, gosh, yes. Okay.
We're gonna have to finish very soon, so we'll do questions in a moment. But Germany did not defeat France in the First World War, right? There was a 4-year protracted war. Nothing happened really, right? Germany defeated France in 19 days in the Second World War. 19 days, not 19 years, not 19 weeks, not 19 whatever, 19 days. France was at the negotiation table within a few days later. This is how quick this happened, right? So do you know what? I haven't even done this map today, really. I haven't really given it justice, right? So what I want you to do is go away, have a look at this map, or a similar map to this. Type in Germany before 1939, right? Ignore Poland. Ignore it. Right, have a look at a map, read up about it, and then we'll do a bit of that next week, right? But then what we will do, we'll move on.
Okay.
Okay. And as I say, what you're going to get from me is cause and effect. You're going to get the Germans doing terrible things to the Russians, and then the Russians doing terrible things to the Germans. You know, at the beginning, we showed an image of over 3 million Russian soldiers died in German concentration camps.
Yes.
The same figure is the amount of German soldiers who died in Russian work camps in Siberia. It's just about the same figure.
Yeah.
Cause and effect, always. Poland, cause and effect. It's the same thing. And one last thought. Germany did not ever want to go to war with Britain.
No.
It thought that Britain would never go to war with Germany. Germany kept making mistakes like that in the Second World War all the time. Right, so what we're going to do, I'm going to ask, are there any questions?
No. No.
And what I think I'm going to try and do is my God, at this point, there are good aspects about the Second World War. But there are other contrasts. If Germany had mobilized its people in 1939, the women in particular, to work in Germany's armed forces, if Germany did not put people into concentration camps, it would have won the Second World War.
Yeah.
That's fact. Britain, on the other hand, mobilized its people. It used prisoners of war to work on the land, right? He didn't put them in concentration camps and gas them, right? Under the Geneva Convention, you were allowed to treat people with respect and they could work on the land and do jobs like that, right? Germany didn't do that. Germany made all the mistakes that Britain didn't make. And I'm not saying, I've gone past the point that I would have wished that Germany would have won the Second World War. I'm on the point that Germany could not have won the Second World War because of everything it got wrong. 99% of the scenarios would have meant that Germany would have lost the Second World War. And practically every scenario with the Japanese means that the Japanese could never have won the Second World War. There was no way. The big mistake that the Japanese, and this is the thing, right? The Second World War is about Japan. We haven't done anything about Japan. Japan's biggest mistake in December 1941 was to go to war against America. Its biggest mistake. If it hadn't have done Pearl Harbor, Japan could have won the Second World War. That was its mistake. And then Germany declared war on America, and that was it. Gone. Mussolini declared war on America. Oh my God, what a big mistake that was. Right, okay then. Any questions? Because obviously Stab's not there this second. We haven't got Evan there a second. So just any questions, quick.
Why did Japan go against the US?
Because Japan thought it was better than the US, basically. Japan thought it could defeat the United States.
With the help of?
No one. No one. Nobody was going to help Japan. I'm sorry. No, Japan was not really an ally of Germany, right?
Because in fact, Mussolini as well going against.
Yeah, exactly. Japan was fighting a war that was at the same time as Germany, and the likes of Bulgaria and Romania and Finland and Italy, right? That's the only common link. If Germany had colonies where it used to within Asia, Japan would have invaded those colonies, and Japan would have been at war with Germany, and Germany could have done nothing about it.
Japan and Germany weren't together in the Second World War.
They were fighting on the same side, but they weren't really together.
Right. Okay.
They weren't together. They were not. They never really, put it this way, Japan sent help to Europe, money-wise, but troops. You didn't see German troops fighting in Japan, and you didn't see Japanese troops fighting in Europe. But there is a slight little weird thing there. There are cases of Japanese troops or people fighting for Japan being captured by the Russians, forced into the Russian army, and then they are then captured by the Germans. Then they say we were fighting, and then they then fight against the Russians, but that's the only circumstance. On that note, if there any questions
coming on from this computer anyway, so
yes, okay, brilliant.
This laptop.
Okay, so what I'll do if you haven't got any questions, right? If you could sort, we'll see you next week. I'm hopefully can see you Monday. I'll bring the book along. Try and sort out the Dennis Powers thing.
It's up to Jessica now. She wants to go and have a look at the pub. She can.
Okay.
Aaron at the bar.
Well, give her a ring. Give her a ring.
And then there's she'll need to go into the office from 9 till 5 on whenever they're at the Lee Hall. But I think yeah.
All right. Okay then. Well, if you want to sort all those things out, right?
Okie dokes.
Then get Stav on, and what I'll do, I'll stop this recording. Is this what you expected us to do?
Yeah, great. Really fascinating.
The problem is you're going to have to take notes and say, well, you said we were going to do this, because unfortunately, I'm going to say that we're going to do something next week, and I'm going to write it in my diary, and I was going to go off on tangent. We need to complete that map that we were looking at, and that's key. That's A level. That is A level. We've
got stuff to read up on.
Yeah, we've got to do that map next week. That's very important.
In my head.
Yeah.
And I know more now than I did.
Brilliant. Okay.
And hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So what we'll do now, we'll call that a day now. Get Stav on. I'm going to take a couple of minutes break, and I'll get the boys on. Okay.
Thanks, Carl, and I'll
Thank-
sort out the truffles.
Thank you, Rosamond. See you soon.
Hwyl fawr, hwyl.
Hwyl fawr. Diolch yn fawr i chi. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.